हालिया बरसों में जनूबी एशिया में कशीदगी एक बार फिर बढ़ रही है। पाकिस्तान भारत ताल्लुकात या अफगानिस्तान की सरहदी सूरत हाल। गुफ्तगू अमूमन जंग, हथियारों और एटमी ताकत तक महदूद रहती है, लेकिन ये हकीकत है कि आज की दुनिया में लड़ाइयाँ सिर्फ मैदान जंग में नहीं बल्कि अदालतों, आलमी इदारों, कवानीन और बयानियों के जरिए भी लड़ी जा रही हैं। इसी को लॉफेयर कहा जाता है, यानी कानून को बतौर हथियार इस्तेमाल करते हुए आलमी कवानीन, इंसानी हकूक, पाबंदियाँ, मालियाती नज़म और सफारती फोरम्स के ज़रिए किसी मुल्क को दबाव में लाया जाता है। मैं हूँ सुबूक सैयद और आप देख रहे हैं डिजिटल डिबेट। हमारे आज के मेहमान हैं रिसर्च सोसाइटी ऑफ इंटरनेशनल लॉ के डायरेक्टर जनाब ओवैस अनवर। गुज़श्ता बरसों में भारत ने इंसदाद दहशतगर्दी के कवानीन, कश्मीर से मुताल्लिक बयानिए और FATF जैसे फोरम्स पर पाकिस्तान के ख़िलाफ़ इस हिकमत अमली को इस्तेमाल किया। ये सब 9/11 के बाद बनने वाले आलमी सिक्योरिटी निज़ाम और ताकतवर ममालिक के असर व रसूख का हिस्सा है, जहाँ कानून अक्सर ताकत के साथ जुड़कर काम करता है। ओवैस अनवर साहब, बहुत शुक्रिया आपका। मेरा पहला सवाल आपसे ये है कि सुर्खियों और बयानात से आगे बढ़कर ये जांचना ज़रूरी है कि जनूबी एशिया में लॉफेयर किस तरह इर्तिका पजीर हुआ, इसे एक स्ट्रेटजिक हथियार के तौर पर कैसे इस्तेमाल किया गया और इसकी पाकिस्तान की खुद मुख्तारी, सलामती और सफारती पोजीशन पर क्या असरात मरतब हो रहे हैं। सबसे अहम सवाल ये है कि क्या पाकिस्तान इस दुनिया में मुअस्सर जवाब देने के लिए तैयार है, जहाँ जगहें अब मैदान जंग के बजाय कवानीन, इदारों और बयानियों के ज़रिए लड़ी जा रही हैं।
आई थिंक नॉन ट्रेडिशनल वॉरफेयर, खासकर अगर मेरी जो एक्सपीरियंस है लुकिंग एट द लॉफेयर एस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ दिस, तो काफ़ी इट्स इवॉल्व्ड क्वाइट अ बिट, मेनली अगेंस्ट अस। और अब जाके आई थिंक ओवर द लास्ट, आई वुड से मे बी 5 to 6 years have we developed the type of understanding and ability to be able to take on these challenges. Of course, आपका हमारे जो perennial एक आर्च नेमेसिस आप कहते हैं इंडिया जो है, उसने इट इज़ बिन फार more dynamic in understanding how to use lawfare against Pakistan, right? So उस हवाले से I think अगर हम जाएं 2000s, right after 9/11, एक पूरा framework बन गया काउंटर टेररिज्म का जो ग्लोबली अप्लाई हो रहा था, और उसमें द मेन टारगेट स्टेट वाज अफगानिस्तान एंड अलकायदा देयर। पाकिस्तान हैपन टू बी, हमारी जियोग्राफी ऐसी है, वी आर राइट नेक्स्ट टू अफगानिस्तान, तो देयर वाज अ लॉट ऑफ ब्लो बैक, और एटलीस्ट देयर वाज अ लॉट ऑफ टेररिज्म का, ये जो लोग टारगेट उस वक्त हो रहे थे, अलकायदा हो गया, तालिबान हो गया, दे वर सीपिंग इनटू पाकिस्तान एज वेल। तो वी ऑल्सो बिकेम विद इन द क्रॉस हेयर्स ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर फ्रेमवर्क। इंडिया यूटिलाइज दैट अ लॉट। इंडिया ने कहा कि how can we portray Pakistan as a state sponsor of terrorism? Not just in Afghanistan, where the Americans and the UN Security Council mechanism is looking at, Al-Qaeda and Taliban-affiliated terrorism networks, but also that Pakistan promotes terrorism in Kashmir and overall in India and those things. So we had that. उसके बाद आपका मुंबई अटैक्स हो गए, आपके पुलवामा, उरी, इस किस्म के अटैक्स हो गए. So all of these fed into the Indian narrative. India was able to play it up. मसला जो इंडिया के लिए अब हो रहा है वो ये है कि 20 साल हो गए, बात जो है थोड़ी सी, it's gone beyond terrorism, right? The whole world has gotten sick and tired of that debate. And what we're seeing is that Pakistan has actually reined in whatever control it had or whatever influence it had on, say, militants or freedom fighters. Pakistan has withdrawn much of that support, at least ostensibly, at least in the, kinetic domain from them. So Pakistan is not promoting any sort. If you wanted to see such a thing, तो बहुत spectacular attacks भी हो सकते थे, but they haven't been taking place, and there's been a reduction in overall violence in the Kashmir Valley. The other issue that India does not realize is, and which the world seems to be very clear on, is that India has made Kashmir the most militarized zone in the world. So obviously there is going to be some backlash, and there's going to be some some discomfort with this type of authoritarian rule. दूसरा, उन्होंने आर्टिकल 370 की रेवोकेशन किया, तो आप अगर एक हाथ से उनका गला जो है दबा रहे हैं, एंड यू आर टेकिंग आउट वट एवर सोर्स ऑफ फ्रस्ट्रेशन अपनी वेंट करना, डेमोक्रेसी आपने ख़त्म कर दी, आपने वहाँ पे इलेक्शंस जो हैं डिले कर दिया, आपने उसको बाइफरकेट कर दिया पूरे स्टेट को, सब कुछ उनका वो कर दिया. वाई? बिकॉज दे हैपन टू बी मुस्लिम, एंड it was the only Muslim state in India. So because of that, there was a lot of frustration amongst the people, and this is now being slowly recognized कि genuinely frustration है, right? और आपने internet बंद कर दिया, and all of those things जो हुए. So उसके हवाले से, so India's argument there became very weak in portraying Pakistan continuously, and that's why ये जो make a conflict हुआ था, that wasn't really, the narrative didn't go in India's favor.
दूसरा सवाल मेरा ये है कि जब भारत ने आर्टिकल 370 ख़त्म किया तो क्या ये महज एक दाखिली आइनी इक़दाम था या फिर जानबूझ कर किया गया एक ऐसा इशारा था जिसका मकसद कश्मीर की कानूनी हैसियत को बैनुल-अक़वामी सतह पर तब्दील करना था?
I mean, so India has always been trying to portray this, that India is theirs, India is theirs. The problem is कि इंडिया ने जो ओरिजिनल sin किया है वो है that it has not abided by the UN Security Council resolutions, right? और resolutions क्या कहती थी कि आप withdraw करेंगे, उसके बाद plebiscite होगा, ठीक है. The thing that a lot of people, especially non-lawyers, don't understand is the value of these Security Council resolutions is not in the fact कि withdrawal होगा और फिर plebiscite होगा, is that the mechanism for transferring sovereignty of the territory of Kashmir is prescribed in those Security Council resolutions. So the only way either Pakistan or India can get Kashmir or the territory of Kashmir and have title to it is through the mechanism of a plebiscite. और वो जब तक नहीं होगा वो territory disputed ही रहेगी, right? पाकिस्तान इसको implicitly और explicitly बल्कि recognize करता है. इसलिए हमारे constitution में हमने AJK और GB को या the rest of Kashmir has not been included as part of our formal Pakistani territory. This is subject to a plebiscite and then they will be joined there, right? India ने इसी चीज़ को, it initially Article 370 का मकसद ये था कि वो एक temporary, जब तक ये resolve नहीं होता Security Council measures के मुताबिक, उन्होंने वो establish किया था. When it took that away, what did it say? कि we don't believe in anything that the Security Council has to say, हम अपनी मर्जी करेंगे and we are now taking over. So एक illegality पे उन्होंने double down किया, and they have now re-emphasized कि this is an illegality. So legally, the case of the Kashmiri freedom fighters, the case of people who want independence from India, and the Pakistani position, all is strengthened through this. And especially जो India की motivations हैं अभी, BJP government की हिंदुत्व supremacist ideology जो है, that really undermines their case, and I think that's something that goes against their narrative whenever they try to build something on Kashmir like that.
गज़ा से लेकर यूक्रेन तक हम देखते हैं कि बैनुल-अक़वामी कानून एक बड़ा मनपसंद तौर पर हमारे सामने आ रहा है, और ये जो कानून है ये रियासती रवैयों को मौसर तौर पर कानून साजी के ज़रिए महदूद करता है. क्या आप समझते हैं कि अब ये कानून ताकतवर रियासतों के हाथ में एक आले के तौर पर आ रहा है?
That's a good question. इसमें international law over the past 2-3 years has taken a real beating. और बहुत से लोगों ने कहा है कि does international law have any value left after what's happened in Gaza? It hasn't been able to constrain Israel. इसकी कोई अहमियत रहती है after what Russia has been doing in Ukraine, after what the US approach has been in a number of countries. अभी वेनेजुएला का एक ऑयल टैंकर उनने कल जो है they took over. So the real argument here becomes whether international law can keep that sanctity which then binds other states. उस sanctity के बगैर वो नहीं कर सकता. And the problem is that the sanctity is a notion. It's a fiction between you and me and the rest of the world. We believe that international law is binding, that's why it's binding. Otherwise, international law is, literally a figment of our imagination, right? So, until and unless states feel that international law is binding, until and unless states genuinely come together and re-emphasize the sanctity that international law has, the legitimacy that it has, and bind other states and hold them accountable, utne tak nothing's going to happen. And what this means is that when we talk about, say, in the context of Israel, the Israeli government has to be held accountable. Netanyahu has to be held accountable. And all of their ministers, whether it's Gallant or it's Gant or all of these genocidal statements that have been made and genocidal actions that have been taken, the IDF, they have to be taken to task. Otherwise, what do? You undermine the foundation of international law. And similarly, Russia के साथ already उन्होंने process शुरू कर दी है, पुतिन के खिलाफ ICC arrest warrants निकाल लिए हैं, ये सब कुछ, लेकिन वो नहीं है. So अब now coming down to South Asia, we've already seen a deterioration. What is the first line of defense when another country attacks? The first line of defense is not the missiles that you have or the tanks or the bombs. It is the Article 2.4 prohibition, UN Charter ka jo Article 2.4 prohibition on the attack, on basically interfering in another country's internal affairs, or basically attacking another country. So it's a blanket ban on the use of force, if you will. ठीक है जी, वो जो वायलेट हो जाता है तो देयर हैज टू बी सम गुड रीजन फॉर इट. या तो आप सेल्फ डिफेंस में आप कर रहे हो कि यू वर फर्स्ट अटैक्ड, right? And that's the argument that a lot of states say. Or you have Security Council authorization. And in neither case did India have, when these May attacks took place, did they have that. So Pakistan raised this, that our defense, bringing down 6 planes, attacking Indian bases, taking down a lot of their S-400, या उनकी बैटरी जो हमने hit की थी, और anti-missile defense, aerial defense measures जो थे, all of that was Pakistan legally could justify its position, and so we were strengthened in that regard. So these are some things that we need to keep in mind, that international law ki jo ability to shape actual on ground reality depends on how much we believe in it, right? So it's a difficult situation to look at right now.
एक गैर मुसावी आलमी निज़ाम में जहाँ असर रसूख अक्सर कानून पर हावी होता है, पाकिस्तान जैसी रियासत ये कैसे यकीनी बना सकती है कि कानूनी तौर पर दुरुस्त होना वाकई कोई मानी रखता है?
So Pakistan and India are in very different unique positions. India का, as you mentioned, बहुत बड़ी economy है, all of those things. लेकिन in the end they are a country that is struggling with a lot of internal problems, right? Poverty being one of the biggest, right? And because that is one of those issues there, dealing with that, dealing with the internal bureaucratic problems that they have for, say, weapons development. अब इनका तेजस का हमने देखा, very unfortunate. अभी recently Dubai Air Show में there was a crash as well. उस लिहाज से इंडिया के there is a lot that is exposed at times of their weaknesses. They portray themselves to be the new superpower on the block, but really if you look at it, अंदर से खोखले हैं काफी, right? They have very serious issues, and one of those, I think the foundation of a lot of these issues is the fact that the ideology on which this new state of India is based, this BJP Modi's India is based, is a very hollow and a very problematic ideology. It is an ideology based on hate, और hate आपको आगे नहीं लेके जा सकता, unfortunately, right? For them, and what you need is something that brings India together, that your Muslims feel included, that your Christians feel included, your Sikhs, as well as the Hindu majority there, right? And that is not something that can happen. In Pakistan, we also have problems, but I don't feel that the state is backing them with this Islamic supremacist ideology, right? And that Pakistan today would be more secular than perhaps India claims to be. And in fact, India though has given up openly. It is no more a secular state that it says, and so these are things that we have to keep in mind. So ultimately, India has exposed itself kafi in this entire thing. Pakistan has shown itself to be one, a little more responsible, comparatively speaking. Secondly, its ability to hold India at bay, even in conventional terms, which is, I think, the biggest shock that India received, and it's still reeling, still doesn't know how to deal with it. Right? अभी जयशंकर की स्टेटमेंट आई थी, उनका जो फॉरेन एक्सटर्नल अफेयर्स का मिनिस्टर है, कि वी विल रिस्पॉन्ड टू पाकिस्तान एंड वी विल गेट बैक टू दम, ये जो दिल्ली में जो ब्लास्ट हुआ था, बट वी आर लुकिंग एट वेज टू मिनिमाइज something along these lines to minimize their ability to hit back, right? And so the fact that Pakistan was able to hit back, I think, made a huge dent not only in India's image of invincibility. Not only did we take out their prize fighter, the Rafale, we were able to hit targets like the S-400, which they did not expect Pakistan to have the technology or the ability to hit. And that, I think, is something that is fundamental in this new equation that is developing. Strength जो है, that demonstrates to the world that you are serious, you should be taken seriously. And that, I think, is what Trump has also responded to, what the rest of the world has also responded to. The Chinese are very happy with Pakistan's position there. So I think there's been overall, especially the Arab world, which had turned off from Pakistan quite a bit, they have now regained. We had the agreement with Saudi Arabia, which is phenomenal for Pakistan's standpoint, that there is another country that is willing to stand with you no matter who attacks you, right? That is a big element there. Whether they actually do it in practice is a separate matter. Lekin with the Saudi Arabia thing, I think that changes the dynamic somewhat as well. India will also have to think twice before ever attacking Pakistan, because it knows that there's another country involved, and attacking Pakistan means the same as attacking Saudi Arabia. We never needed Saudi Arabian troops to defend us. Okay, we don't lack in firepower or those things. What we needed perhaps was support in developing new technologies and the funding that is required to develop, say, hypersonic missile technology or things like that. And if we can get Saudi funding for that, or if we can get Saudi support for that, I think that would be a game changer. And then whatever little supremacy India feels on the conventional frame won't really be there anymore.
वैसे अब सवाल ये भी पैदा होता है कि क्या पाकिस्तान अब तक सिर्फ कानूनी और सफारती दबाव पर रद्द-ए-अमल देता रहा है, या ऐसी मिसालें भी मौजूद हैं जहां इसने अपने मुकद्दमात का तहफ़्फ़ुज़ करने के लिए बैनुल-अक़वामी कानूनी फोरम्स को पेशगी और मौसर अंदाज में इस्तेमाल किया हो?
So I think Pakistan अभी भी we are one of those countries जो back foot पे खेल रहे हैं, because a lot of the onslaught that has come hasn't been militarily against Pakistan. It has been through lawfare means. चाहे FATF की grey listing हो, चाहे आपका कुलभूषण यादव का केस हो, चाहे इंडिया का इंडस वाटर ट्रीटी की withdrawal हो या suspension हो, जो भी आप कहना चाहें. All of those, so Pakistan has really been on the back foot. यूरोपियन यूनियन का GSP प्लस स्टेटस जो है, पाकिस्तान हैज़ टू डेमोन्स्ट्रेट कंप्लायंसेस है, लेकिन इन चीज़ों पे वी बीन वेरी गुड. ओके, सो यूरोपियन यूनियन की ESP प्लस, EU GSP प्लस, हमने अपना मैकेनिज्म्स पाकिस्तान में इम्प्रूव किए हैं. ह्यूमन राइट्स रिपोर्टिंग के हवाले से ट्रीटी इम्प्लीमेंटेशन सेल्स हमने बनाए, हर सूबे में ये इम्प्लीमेंट करते हैं. वी गेट डेटा फ्रॉम द ग्राउंड एंड वी एबल टू रिपोर्ट इट टू द इंटरनेशनल कम्युनिटी थ्रू द मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ ह्यूमन राइट्स. So I think that is something that's very positive. Yes, there has also been a backsliding in terms of human rights in Pakistan, right? आपका freedom of speech के issues आ रहे हैं, आपके democratic backsliding बड़ी serious आ रही है, और बेशुमार कुछ इस किस्म के problems are there, which hurts Pakistan's human rights record, but ultimately hurts the people of Pakistan. And that is who the problem with Pakistani policy is that we don't keep the Pakistani citizen at the center. We keep the European Union is going to be angry with us, let us do something for them. If you're talking about human rights, it should be because the people in Pakistan deserve those human rights, not because the European Union has imposed or offered you trade concessions and if you abide by human rights obligations. So these are some of the issues that we see that Pakistan has done well here. Nuclear domain mein we are phenomenal when it comes to our nuclear safety on one side, but also abiding by all the international nuclear legal requirements जो civilian side पे वो होते हैं. So I think Pakistan is doing very well there. आपके जो बाकी areas भी हैं, I think Pakistan overall has done a pretty good job. खासकर ये FATF का अगर आप देख लें, FATF ने जो obligations पाकिस्तान के ऊपर लगाए थे, because of US pressure, because of India pushing this a lot and really trying to get Pakistan in a corner, no other country has ever had as tough a program, and I doubt any other country will have such a tough program from FATF ever again. Right? So Pakistan ka deliberately, it was a way of punishing Pakistan. And yes, we had deficiencies, but जिस तरीके से उन्होंने वो impose किया, so getting off that grey list within 2 years is unbelievable, right? But the problem is it had a lot of impact, negative impact. So things like, अगर आपने अपने बैंकिंग सिस्टम को इतना टाइट कर दिया है कि नथिंग कैन मूव, तो देन इफ अ पोर पर्सन वांट्स टू ओपन अप अ बैंक अकाउंट, तो उसकी he probably won't even be able to meet the requirements paperwork wise of being able to open a bank account or getting a credit card or something like that. So financial inclusion के issues आ गए. NGOs, if they wanted to open up bank accounts, उनके issues आ गए because they're non-state actors, right? So these became problems that now emerge, and Pakistan has to start dealing with these. दूसरा आपका cryptocurrencies आ गया. How are you going to regulate this? Pakistan has tens of billions of dollars invested in cryptocurrency globally, right? Pakistanis. It's unbelievable the amount of money that Pakistanis have invested into this area. So how are you going to regulate this? How are you going to that this money that has been invested will eventually come back to Pakistan or help it? Or is there a currency that Pakistan could float which is state backed to some extent and then benefits Pakistan in that way? So कुछ तो attempts हो रही हैं यहाँ पे. But these are all issues that again will come onto the FATF radar, and now that we've fixed our systems quite a bit, so I doubt that we'll be immediately grey listed. Or minor grey listing is not a big issue. अभी UAE भी हुआ था, Israel भी हुआ है. Many European countries get grey listed every now and then, so it's not such a big deal. मेन जो चीज़ें थी, जो फाउंडेशनल चीज़ें थी, वो हमने ठीक कर ली हैं. सो दैट्स अ पॉजिटिव देयर.
अवैस साहब, जब इंसानी हकूक़ का बयानिया मुंतखब अंदाज में इस्तेमाल किया जाता है तो पाकिस्तान को क्या हिकमत अमली अपनानी चाहिए? क्या दोहरे मेयार को बेनकाब किया जाए या दाखिली सतह पर एहतिसाब को मजबूत बनाकर मुखालफिन से ये जवाज़ ही छीन लिया जाए?
So I think सबसे पहले तो we need to disabuse ourselves of this notion that the world is fair and that they will जैसे उन्होंने पाकिस्तान को क्रिटिसाइज़ किया वैसे ही वो इंडिया को भी क्रिटिसाइज़ करेंगे या इजराइल को करेंगे. दैट इज़ नॉट द वे. वी नो दैट इफ़ यू आर आवर एलाई वी विल नॉट टॉक अबाउट Uyghur Muslims and the zulm that has been taking place over there. If you're our ally, we're not going to talk about the fact that you abuse laborers that work in your country and things like that. This is Pakistan's position. So similarly, the rest of the world, right? Israel can get away with literally a genocide, and the US is not going to criticize it to that extent, or to really any extent, or even recognize that a genocide took place. So this type of stuff, whether it is human rights, whether it is your ability to comply with anti-money laundering and terrorism financing regimes, or whether it is your ability to comply with nuclear regulations, if your adversaries will criticize you on these things and they will use whatever tools they have against you. Human rights is just one framework, right? It's a framework that it makes people look bad. It's a way of embarrassing a state. कि आपके देखो human rights record. There's not a single country that has such a perfect or I would say a human rights record that is clean like that, right? But there are obviously different stages of human rights abuse, and there are some countries that are involved in very serious abuses, and others less so. The issue ultimately is that you should not give the opponent any ammunition, right? अगर आपके मुल्क में genuinely abuses हो रहे हैं and the state is involved in these things, अगर freedom of speech के issues आ रहे हैं, अगर rights की violations हो रही हैं throughout the country, तो you need to start addressing those as well, not just saying कि ये तो किसी और की warfare और हमारे ऊपर criticisms आ रहा है, this and that. That's not the issue. Exactly, and that I think is the real issue, that we think human rights की accountability जो है is a foreign notion. We also think that human rights themselves are a Western Eurocentric but जो underlying question है वो ये कि do Pakistanis not deserve human rights? हम क्या कोई और मखलूक हैं? हम are we lesser human beings than say Europeans because Europeans can get human rights but we should not get human rights? Because that's ultimately the question underneath this ना. ये तो Western concept है, तो फिर आप अपना concept लें. Islamic concepts of rights though are replete with that. In fact, most rights that you see in this Western concept या ICCPR में वो तो you'll find backing in Islamic law as well.
जब कवानीन को स्ट्रेटेजिक अंदाज में तरतीब दिया जाता है तो वो किस तरह बैनुल-अक़वामी सतह पर हरीफ रियासतों को घेरने या महदूद करने का ज़रिया बन जाते हैं?
Yeah, so I think this is a great point, especially when it comes to terrorism की domain है. अब इंडिया ने जो पूरा narrative बनाया है has been based on domestic cases that they launched. से अजमल कसाब का जो केस था after Mumbai trials, तो वो domestic law था, but they had a mechanism under the domestic law where a court could send letter-rogatories या letters to Pakistan for cooperation, right? हमारे system में भी कुछ इस किस्म का mechanism, but it's not clear, nor has it been utilized enough for us to implement it. So if attacks take place here, हमने अपना mutual legal assistance, जो extradition mechanisms हैं, जो international cooperation के mechanisms हैं, we need to strengthen those. Not only with how to deal with other countries, but then how do we process them domestically. हमने अपने investigation systems को improve करने हैं. आपने देखा होगा कि every now and then हम जो है एक intelligence का या एक dossier produce करते हैं of Indian involvement in Pakistan, right? Foreign Office launch करता है, वहाँ पे DG ISPR भी बैठे होते हैं, all of those things. They have very little impact because who knows where you've gotten this intelligence from, whether you've made it up, this and that. अगर लोगों की recordings हैं, कभी-कभी TV पे आ जाती हैं कि देखें Indian handler. How do you know that this is genuine? Indians do the same thing. Nobody believes them. Why should somebody believe you? Evidence which is done through a legal process, CRPC, the Criminal Procedure Code के मुताबिक, कानून शहादत के मुताबिक, आपके जो criminal laws हैं उनको follow करके, when you build a case against somebody in the and take this to court, and court में cross examination होता है, you find out that this piece of evidence that you've done is legitimate. That is something that then can stand up in international cases. So ये Johor Town blast case था, जो where they tried to target ली मैं नाम भूल रहा हूँ, but तो उस केस में we did a phenomenal investigation and we were able to catch the culprits. We were able to get those. We even found their foreign links and it was helping establish Indian involvement clearly in Pakistan. That was something, that is the approach that we need to take. उसमें आपने अपनी laws अगर improve करनी है तो करें. आपने अपने आप को tools देने हैं, things like special investigative techniques, जिसमें undercover operations आते हैं, access in computer systems, control delivery, and सबसे importantly, interception and surveillance. Right? You need to be able to take intelligence and convert it into admissible evidence in court. और उसकी प्रॉपर प्रोसेस होती है. आप सर्टन वारंट के तहत करते हैं, ओपन करते हैं अपना जो इंटेलिजेंस गैदरिंग टेक्निक है कि किस व्हाट टाइप ऑफ टूल्स डिड यू यूज इन दिस रिगार्ड. सो अंटिल अनलेस वी एक्चुअली अपग्रेड आवर एबिलिटी and stop being a colonial police force, be a modern police force, these issues, this will hamper our ability to impact the strategic equation with India or with any other country like that too.
ऐसे दौर में जब बयानिए कानूनी अमल से कहीं ज़्यादा तेज़ी से फैलते हैं, क्या लॉफेयर हकीकतन इंफॉर्मेशन वॉरफेयर और डिसइंफॉर्मेशन मुहिम्मात का मुकाबला कर सकता है?
थोड़ा सा मैं इस क्वेश्चन के प्रेमिस को चैलेंज करूंगा. ये तो लेंथी की जब हम बात करते हैं तो we're assuming that history starts from today. It doesn't start from today. ये तो पिछले 20 साल से we've been suffering the same. So if for 20 years we've been suffering the same and we know that there is a solution which will take roughly say 5 years or 10 years. So if you could have started at some point, you have to commit to long-term solutions because हमारी entire जो approach है, whether it's terrorism or to any other major issue in Pakistan, is short-termism. Right? ये चाहे आपकी इलेक्शन साइकिल के साथ लिंक्ड है कि 5 साल के अंदर सोल्यूशन हमने करना है या कुछ और है. We have to find and double down on long-term solutions which last beyond political governments as well. जिसमें consensus built हो कि this is the solution, this is what we have to do. Right? You can't have that where you have political fractures so severe कि एक सूबे के साथ तो आपने बातें नहीं करनी, दूसरे सूबे पता नहीं किसी और तरफ वो हुआ है. So these become issues that, until you have political stability in your country, you can't resolve these major issues. Right? And so I push back when they say that these are long-term solutions. They are long-term solutions, but they're the only solution. So if you are not willing to commit to it and not willing to then forget about trying to be genuine about finding a solution here. Then you're going to suffer the same things again and again and again. Right? So yeah, unfortunately this is, it's not a very rosy picture, but that's what it is.
क्या डिजिटल रेगुलेशन, चाहे वो प्लेटफॉर्म गवर्नेंस हो या डेटा कंट्रोल, हाइब्रिड लॉफेयर का नया महाज बन चुकी हैं और क्या रियासतें इस तब्दीली के लिए तैयार हैं?
Again, being a Pakistani, I'm sometimes very critical of my own government because this is, who I can be critical of. Modi ka, even if I'm critical of him, it doesn't make a difference. He doesn't belong to my country. So the issue I see of regulating the digital space is you have to be very careful with that. एक तो there are massive freedom of speech issues. दूसरा ये है कि अब आपकी जितनी ज़िंदगी इस दुनिया में फिजिकल उसमें रह रही है उतनी आपकी एक डिजिटल डोमेन में भी है. राइट? ठीक है, आप वहाँ पे अभी प्लॉट नहीं खरीद सकते, लेकिन वो भी वक्त आ रहा है. Right, where you can buy a house in the digital domain or you can buy products, and they've already started doing this. ये जो आपका Web 3.0 ये चीज़ें, cryptocurrencies already आ गई हैं. So there is value in a domain which is completely virtual, right? Monetary value, which can convert between digital and physical when you convert it back to actual cash, your dollars, your rupees. So we have to be very careful how we regulate this, and we don't suppress it, because countries that are suppressing these things aren't doing very well economically. Or at least they're not being able to encourage the innovation and growth that is there. दूसरी ये चीज़ है कि आपकी influence जो है is directly relevant to your ability, the level of economic stability that you have, या आपकी जो इस domain में, digital domain में जो influence वो है. So that impacts your ability to then change and alter or influence strategic mechanisms like that, right? या India का जो impact आपके ऊपर है. Now we know कि India जो है plays dirty when it comes to the digital domain, sadly, right? But it's also fun at times when you look at it. अभी ये मेक अ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट हुआ, ट्विटर बंद था पाकिस्तान में, उस कॉन्फ्लिक्ट के लिए ख़ास जो है ट्विटर खोल गया हमारे लिए, राइट? एंड वी वर एबल टू देन पाकिस्तानीज फॉट बैक ऑन द डिजिटल फ्रंट, एंड you have to give it to the Pakistani people. The type of memes we make and the type of warfare that we fight, when it comes to that, I don't think the Indians are even close to that level, right? आप bot farms से genuine humor नहीं create कर सकते. And I think that had a huge role to play as well. राइट आपका 6-0 और आपका औरंगजेब साहब को प्रमोट करना और आपके ये सब चीज़ें दे हैव एन इम्पैक्ट राइट एंड अंडरमाइंस द मोरल ऑफ द अपोजिंग साइड एंड ऑल्सो शेप्स योर ओन मोरल right? So it's critical that you give enough space to your people. At the same time, you're suffering from issues like terrorism. You've got those things you don't want to. So, but be careful, right? My only argument is that when you're fighting terrorism and you have a vibrant youth, right? Pakistan, the majority of our population is young. You don't want to be able to use one legal regime to suppress the genuine feelings and anxiety that the youth has, because that is your future and that is you have to really cultivate and look after this war.
अवैध साहब, जब तनाज़ात अब वाज़े जंग या अमन के बजाय कानूनी इबहाम वाले इलाकों में हो रहे हैं, तो क्या बैनुल-अक़वामी कानून इतनी तेज़ी से बदल रहा है कि इन हालात से निमट सके, या हम एक ऐसे दौर में दाखिल हो रहे हैं जहां आलमी क़वानीन आहिस्ता आहिस्ता अपनी अहमियत और असर खो रहे हैं?
सो इंटरनेशनल लॉ की डेवलपमेंट बहुत ही अहम है, बिकॉज इट्स द वन थिंग विच मी यू an American, a Chinese individual, an Indian can, we all come to the same page on, right? It's because we've all negotiated it and we've all agreed to it and ratified it and voluntarily assumed its obligations. ये international law की value है. अब कुछ चीज़ें आ रही हैं जो future में they're going to be difficult to regulate because जो current laws हैं they might not work for them. So for example, modern warfare technologies जो आपके आ गई हैं, ड्रोन वॉरफेयर है, उसको आप कैसे रेगुलेट करते हैं? अब तो ऐसे ड्रोन्स आ गए हैं विच आर AI based, so there's no human in the loop. Turn this drone on, it's fed with certain, we have to target people who are Taliban fighters. अब ये कैसे determine करेगा कि this is a Taliban fighter? It will have certain, you programmed it with, say, the person has to have a beard, has to be male, he has to be carrying a weapon, शलवार कमीज़ पहनी होगी, शायद उसने पाकोल वो टोपी पहनी हो. इन चीज़ों को जब आप देख लेंगे तो then you target that individual. But there could be so many Pashtuns in our tribal belt who this is just normal everyday wear for them, or अपनी security के लिए they're carrying a gun or whatever it is, right? And then in that situation, when say a civilian is killed, somebody who is not involved in any violence, who do you hold accountable? Is it the person who turned it on? Is it the commander who said ke release drones here? Is it the programmer? Right? So you have accountability के issues. This was not before, the case before. पहले ये था कि जिसने पायलट है उसने मिसाइल फायर किया, उसने गलती की है, he is held accountable. There is a person who was in charge of the artillery. He launched the artillery. It killed civilians deliberately. He did it. It's a war crime. So you could hold people accountable, or the commander who gave the order. But now in this new domain with AI coming in, how do you hold the AI accountable? You pull the plug on it, what do you do? Right? So there's no real answer to this. And we need to find answers here. The current international domain, या जो rules of war हैं, जो laws of war हैं, they're inadequate in those regards. फिर आपके पास, you get so many different, cyber domain जो है, cyber domain में cyber attacks आपका पूरा बैंकिंग सेक्टर उड़ा दें. अभी फॉर एग्जांपल a lot of my life is on the banking app, right? If I can't pay my bills, if I can't pay my mobile phone bill, all of those things, it affects me, right? और जब भी मुझे मैसेज आता है कि maintenance, scheduled maintenance है, मैं कहता हूँ यार अब what's going to happen now? So that's a huge thing. What if they take out your ability to be on the internet? Right? So if Pakistan can't, already we have a shark that is undermining our internet in Pakistan significantly, right? So other than, what if there's another shark that the Indians release? And now we don't have access to the internet globally. What are we going to do? Right? So that becomes a huge issue, because it's not only an issue in terms of your just having your ability to, say, fight back on the digital domain, but it's also an issue in terms of your economy, because massive aspects of your economy is based on the internet, right? So आपकी सब जो e-shopping है, e-commerce है, all of those platforms, आपकी cryptocurrency and all of that things. So this becomes really an existential issue that needs to be resolved. Are there state rights over internet? And what if the internet facilities should never be targeted? We can put a ban on these things through so wo is or we could declare that internet is a wholly civilian target and therefore it should never be directly targeted. इस किस्म की चीज़ें हो सकती हैं. And then there are numerous other areas which again need to be regulated, and the world has to come together. But looking at the direction we've taken over the last several years, the Trump effect, countries are closing up. जो मल्टीलैटरलिज्म का एक फ्रेमवर्क था वो कोलैप्स हो रहा है, और अब लोग जो हैं बायलैटरलिज्म में या ब्लॉक पॉलिटिक्स में जा रहे हैं, या they're going inwards as opposed to wanting to cooperate. And this is the worst possible time for it, because climate change जैसे आपके मसले आ रहे हैं, you have huge issues when it comes to violence being used against civilians. Oppressed groups जो हैं, ठीक है, they are being, whether you look at the Gazans or you look at the Kashmiris or you look at people elsewhere in the world, they're very severe questions where international law needs to be there as the foundation to resolve these issues. आपके पास अगर कोई यूनिफाइंग फाउंडेशन ही नहीं है जिसके ऊपर आप बैठ के बात कर सकें, चलें ये these are the rules by which we'll resolve this issue, then you can't resolve issues, right? And so all of that is happening. We're seeing undermining of the UN system, United Nations का system, उसकी funding जो है the US is taking back. इंटरनेशनल डेवलपमेंट की जो फंडिंग है यूएस ने बिलियंस ऑफ डॉलर्स रिड्यूस कर दिए वहाँ से. सो वी आर सीइंग अ ह्यूज प्रॉब्लम इन दिस. अ कोलैप्स इज बैड ऑन इट्स ओन if it leaves a vacuum, but you're not going to have a vacuum, right? This is the Western order that is collapsing, but you have a state like China which is able to, which certainly has the ability to prop up another system which is developed in its image. So wo certainly you're not going to have just a collapse and then it's what's going to replace it that you need to be concerned about. But yeah, there could certainly be a collapse, or at least a reimagination of the UN system, which is not so Western focused, जिसमें वीटो का पावर जो है फ्रांस के पास क्यों है, right? Like it doesn't matter. And even Britain, for example, these are countries that has been powers, right? They do not reflect any real current power like that. So I think those things really have to be modified and changed to quite an extent.
आज के जनूबी एशिया में जंग सिर्फ सरहदों पर नहीं लड़ी जा रही, बल्कि कवानीन, बयानियों और इदारों के ज़रिए भी लड़ी जा रही है. पाकिस्तान के लिए ज़रूरी है कि वो सिर्फ फ़ौजी ताकत पर इन्हिसार न करे, बल्कि मजबूत इदारे, मुअस्सर कानूनी हिकमत अमली, सियासी इस्तेहकाम और अपने शहरियों के हुकूक़ का तहफ़्फ़ुज़ यकीनी बनाए. ऐसी सूरत में पाकिस्तान इस बदलती हुई दुनिया में अपने मफादात का दिफा कर सकता है.